again, everyone. Welcome back to Cotton Grower Magazine's Cotton Companion podcast. I'm Jim Stedman, editor of Cotton Grower, and I'm flying solo for this episode as my good friend and colleague Beck Barnes is wrestling with a case of daycare-delivered flu. Those of us with kids completely understand, and we certainly hope he feels better soon. But as of this moment, it's cold across the Cotton Belt. Depending on where you are right now, you may be experiencing some very unusual winter weather, including snow and ice in places where snow and ice generally aren't common. For everybody else, it's just unseasonably cold by normal standards. And here in the Memphis area, we've been spared from the snow from this current storm, but we had all we wanted just about a week and a half ago. The crazy thing, of course, I was in New Orleans last week for the Beltwide Cotton Conferences, and the weather there was unseasonably warm for mid-January. And today they're dealing with 3 to 6 inches of snow, right in the midst of their final Super Bowl preparation. I'm really just glad I don't have to cross that Pontchartrain Bridge right now. But the upside to this cotton belt chill is maybe it'll freeze out some overwintering insect populations for growers as we head into the growing season. And if so, that should make some extension entomologists smile just a little bit more. But speaking of the Beltwide Conference, I'm told attendance was slightly higher than the past few years, which I think is a positive thing heading into a challenging 2025. The overall tone, though, was definitely honest. There was no sugarcoating. It's likely going to be more of the same for a while longer. And that was the overall theme of the U.S. and Global Cotton Outlook presentation during the conference, and that was presented this year by Jarral Neeper, who's president of TruCott Incorporated out in Bakersfield, California. I had an opportunity to sit down and visit with Jarral after his presentation, and we're going to share that discussion with you here in just a few minutes. But first, we want to welcome Vive Crop Protection back to the podcast as a 2025 sponsor. Our colleague and custom content manager Hillary Wynn recently visited with Greg Esco, who is U.S. sales lead at Vive. We want to share their conversation with you right now.
Hi, this is Hillary Wynn, Custom Content Manager with Meister Media Worldwide, publisher of Cotton Grower Magazine. My guest today is Greg Esco, U.S. Sales Leader at Vive Crop Protection. Greg, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today, Hillary.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Vive.
Yeah, so I come from a farming background, cotton and peanuts, southern crops. And here at Vive, I am the U.S. sales lead. So I work with all of our territory sales managers throughout the U.S.
Now that we're well into the first month of 2025, what should cotton growers be on the lookout for this year?
You know, as we move into this 25 year, the price of cotton is a little less desirable than what most growers would like. So maximizing yield is the only way to be able to make up that revenue. And there's no better way to maximize that yield than to start off with the best possible cotton plant that you can. And really, that from a early planting standpoint really boils down to managing your nematodes and managing your thrips. They bring on a lot of early season stress that can have a huge yield impact at the end of the year. Obviously, nematodes come in and through the feeding will prune the roots so the plants can't utilize the moisture that they need to and the nutrients. So when you kind of stun that below ground, you're also going to stun that above ground. And it really limits the amount of cotton that the plant can hold. Additionally, thrips are our other big problem as they will jump up and feed on those young cotyledon leaves, those first and second true leaves on the plant, and really have an impact on photosynthesis. Then that kind of plant gets into a situation where it can't overcome the stunning because it can't produce the food through the photosynthesis to take off growing. So those are the big things that these growers really need to be on the lookout for as we move into this year.
So, talking about nematodes and thrips, what can cotton growers do to protect their yield from these pests?
So the best possible way to do that is through applying a crop protection product in furrow. As these plants, as the seed germinates, that root system goes down into that active ingredient and will pull it up even before the seed emerges. Right as that plant's coming out, it's protected. Averlin, which is ivermectin, is the best nematicide on the market today. It's the only one labeled in furrow because we don't have the harsh solvents in there. So therefore, it won't affect the germination of the seed. So as it takes it up, when those nematodes come in and start feeding on the roof, it does a excellent broad spectrum control of nematodes and furrow. Additionally, Villaprid is an imidacloprid, and it provides protection from the thrips as that plant is coming out of the ground and those cotyledons emerge in those first and second true leaves, and gives great protection of those piercing sucking insects like thrips.
Where can growers go to learn more about Vive's cotton solutions?
Yes, to learn more about Vive's crop products, they can go to vivecrop.com/cotton. And there they can look up the labels. They can look up the features and benefits of the products. There's data in there as well.
Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Hillary, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks to Hillary and Greg for that segment, and to Vive Crop Protection for their continuing support of the Cotton Companion podcast. Now, one of the best reasons for attending the Beltwide Cotton Conferences is to find out what's potentially new for the coming year, and also to congratulate some folks on some well-deserved honors. And we're going to kick that off with congratulations to Ben McKnight. Ben is the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension statewide cotton specialist. He was named the 2025 Cotton Specialist of the Year during this meeting. Ben is the 36th recipient of this award, which he received during an awards dinner sponsored by Bayer Crop Science during the Beltwide Conference. He's been in his specialist position since 2020, and he's an excellent resource for growers across Texas, with his colleagues across the Cotton Belt, and for Cotton Grower Magazine as well. The annual award is voted on by the state extension cotton specialists across the Cotton Belt. It is truly a peer acknowledgement of leadership, dedication, and exceptional service in developing and conducting educational programs to meet the needs of cotton producers and the U.S. cotton industry. And Ben is certainly a very worthy recipient of this award. So Ben, congratulations. Likewise, congratulations also go to Dr. Jonathan Wendell. He's Distinguished Professor in the Department of Ecology, Evolution, and Biology at Iowa State University. And Dr. Wendell received the 2024 Cotton Genetics Research Award during the Beltwide Conference. This award was established back in 1961 by U.S. commercial cotton breeders to recognize and encourage basic research in cotton genetics, cytogenetics, and breeding. It's administered by the Joint Cotton Breeding Committee, which includes representatives of the National Cotton Council, USDA, state experiment stations, Cotton Incorporated, and commercial breeders. Dr. Wendell has been at Iowa State since 1986, where he's been heavily involved with research, teaching, and mentorship. He collaborates with researchers internationally and has written or co-written 340 scientific journal articles and book chapters to date, the majority of which have been related to his work in genetics. More information about both of these award recipients can be found online at cottongrower.com. Now, as growers and the rest of the cotton industry move ahead in making their plans for 2025, more and more information is starting to be shared about the current cotton market outlook for the year for both the U.S. and the greater global market. And a lot of those discussions traditionally kick off during the Beltwide Conference, with additional updates and opinions coming over the next few months as the National Cotton Council and USDA revealed their numbers regarding prospective cotton acreage and other market factors. Jarral Neeper, who's president of TruCott Incorporated, a marketing firm out in Bakersfield, California, presented his thoughts on the current market outlook at Beltwide, and I had the opportunity to visit with him following that presentation to discuss some of his key points. We're at the Beltwide Cotton Conferences in New Orleans, and I'm visiting with Jarral Neeper, who's president of TruCott Incorporated in Bakersfield, California. Jarral's a longtime friend, longtime contributor to the Cotton Companion. We've got an opportunity to sit down and visit for a little bit. So, Jarral, how you doing? How's 2025 doing so far?
Hey, Jim, I'm doing great. 2025 is starting out okay. Unfortunately, I'm from the state of California, and right now, you just watch the news and you just feel for those people down in Los Angeles. It's just a horrible situation any way that you look at it. But, personally, my house is not hot or on fire, so, I can't complain. I just, thank the Lord that everything's fine right now for me.
Well, we We spent some time today. You were on the program here to talk about the cotton outlook for 2025, and there might be some pain attached to that, I believe.
Yeah, I've known for quite some time that I need to make this presentation, and I write a commentary, most every day. I called up Inoue, and I typically will put a program together for this. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it this year, but he called me last Thursday or Friday and said, "Hey, how's that presentation coming?" And I said, "What presentation?" He started laughing. I said, "Oh, wait, I don't know what to tell anybody. I just don't know what to say right now. It's just hard." But typically, the general message is, yes, there may be a little bit of pain involved. I don't think we're going to go into the cellar. I don't think futures prices are going to go down to the loan level like we've seen in some years. But I do think we're probably going to spend more time in the 60s than we care to. And it's probably going to be a while before we get back up into something that starts with an 8.
Right.
But I think that by probably maybe spring of 2026, it wouldn't surprise me if we weren't back up into the 80s.
Okay. Let's go through some of the numbers that you brought out in this. And I think the first one I made a note of is you sort of like an evolution of nearby settle, ending stocks, things like that, looking from like what's happened from August of last year up through today.
Yeah, it was really quite interesting. I started putting these monthly numbers together, and it sort of surprised me. I mean, I guess I maybe knew it in the back of my head someplace, but, the August crop report came out. We had a crop estimate of 15.1 million bales, I believe it was. That surprised people because, people were looking for something a lot larger. But what was more of a surprise is that, between domestic consumption and exports, we were looking at an ending stock number of 4.5 million bales. Well, contrast that with the January report. We ended up with a final crop, more or less, there's going to be some minor changes, I'm sure, of 14.414 million bales. Consumption has been reduced. Domestic consumption has been reduced to 100,000 bales. We took exports down from 12 down to 11 million bales, and futures ended up at 6701. Coincidentally, in the August crop report, futures ended up at 6724. So between August and January, and all those numbers and changes and things in between, we're 23 points lower today than we were after the August crop report. So yeah, it was quite interesting.
Yeah, and then go in and take a look at we talk about consumption and production. Well, world production was up last year. World yield was also up when you look at it, and consumption as well. But yet still we seem to be caught in this sort of sideways drift, I believe, as you put it.
Yeah, so just between production and consumption, right? If you look at a chart over the last, 7 or 8 years, yes, we've seen some volatility with production up, production down, consumption up, consumption down, but it's been mostly sideways, and it's been hard to break out of that sideways pattern. Over time, we've had these big jumps in consumption. And typically what precedes a big jump in consumption is a big jump in production.
Right.
A large enough jump in production such that prices go very low and the world's got no choice. Oh, cotton's cheap, let's use cotton. But so that's kind of a painful thing at the time that it's happening. But the nice thing is when you jump up to a new level of consumption, it tends to stay up there. There's going to be some bounces, but it typically will stay up on that new plateau. So, short-term pain, long-term gain, is hopefully in the cards here pretty soon. This year we've got production up a little over 6 million bales. Production is up, or consumption is up about 1.5 million bales. And of course, a lot of that is in China. Some of it's in Brazil. Pakistan was down, which was nice. I think if Pakistan had an unchanged number this year, maybe prices would be lower, because one thing that I think that's been helping to support prices this year is the fact that Pakistan has been a very good buyer of cotton, and particularly of U.S. cotton.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about cotton share and export sales. Share numbers were not exactly rosy.
No. I showed this chart where, in 2020, world consumption was almost 125 million bales of cotton. Cotton had a market share at that point of 24.2% of total fiber demand. And in 2024, this is according to International Cotton Advisory Committee numbers, in 2024, between cotton and non-cotton fibers, cotton had a share of 22.2% or 22.2%. Yes. World fiber consumption didn't slow down. It jumped. It jumped up to just over 500 million bales of fiber.
Right.
Now, that's in tires. There's a lot of uses out there that cotton is never going to, reclaim, anything. But still, if cotton had at least maintained 24.4% or 24.2% of that market share, world consumption would be about 17 million bales, just over 16 million bales higher than it is today.
Right.
So, losing that market share over this time period has been painful. And part of it is, we've had some tight crops. I mean, Australia didn't get, their good rains back until last year.
Right.
This is going to be a second good year of good rains. Brazil is having a larger crop. We struggled here in the United States, particularly West Texas. They struggle with the droughty situations. And so it's been hard to grow consumption if we can't get production, up
where it needs to be.
Right. As far as the world did have a record yield last year in terms of production, but that was due mostly to China. Chinese yield increased from 1,834 pounds up to 2,010 pounds. So a huge jump in Chinese yields last year. And it helped to jump up the world yield number to 752 pounds to the acre.
In export sales, we've seen this year that obviously Brazil and Australia have sort of filled in a little bit on some of the export numbers. But let's focus on the U.S. domestic numbers for a minute. USDA still has a target of what for this year?
1.8 million bales.
1.8 million bales, okay. Where do we sit right now in terms of exports?
Exports, we're right at 8 million bales.
Okay.
And we're about 1 million bales behind the last 2 years. And if you look at a 10-year average, I think, if I remember that average I ran, I think we're closer to 1.5 million bales below a 10-year average. So we are running behind. This came after the presentation, Jim, but one thing that was pointed out was that there's very little cotton forward contracted this year.
Right.
And then when cotton and then it has to get ginned and it has to get classed, and then the recaps have to come out. So, a lot of these merchants probably lost, a month to a month and a half versus other years when they did have a lot of cotton forward contracted. They couldn't buy anything till the recaps showed up.
Right.
So we may have been able to sell more cotton earlier had more cotton been forward contracted, but who wanted to forward contract when things didn't look so rosy at that time?
Right.
That's for sure. But I think export sales will pick up. I think one reason that this market came down and seemingly stopped on a dime at 67 cents is I think that there's a lot of cotton being sold right now. And I think over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to see a significant amount of cotton being sold. Certainly we heard the AXA guy, Buddy Allen. Sorry, buddy. We heard Buddy Allen talk about how it's hard to talk to shippers right now because they're so busy. And from what I've talked, a little bit that I've talked around, not just here, but, on my own, is that, yes, inquiries are really picking up. People are doing business. And now that cotton is flowing, a little bit, as growers, if that past the first of the year,
Right.
they need to, turn that cotton into cash. Doesn't matter how much cash it is.
We need cash, right.
They need cash. We're going to see some good export sales in the next, maybe for the next month, and shipments should start to pick up also.
Okay.
There were some shipments that were held back, I think, because of potential port strike along the East Coast and in the Gulf. And now that that's all taken care of, I'm hearing that things are going to start flowing quickly. So we should see some good sales and some good shipments over the next 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks.
Yeah, I know. I think one of the numbers you threw out in your presentation was we need to average about 138,000 bales per week for shipping.
138,000 bales a week for sales.
For sales. Okay.
We need to get up to about 12.1 million, a little over 12.1 million bales, running bales sold to ship 11 million bales, statistical bales, because you never ship everything in a given year. There's always some carryover. And I think that's going to be very doable. I think that USDA is going to end up having to increase our export estimate up to 11.3 million, and that would take about 150,000 bales a week. Now, it's going to have to be pretty fat here pretty soon.
Right.
You're not going to sell that much cotton during the summer months.
Right.
So we're going to, over the next, Jan, Feb, March, probably even into April, we're going to have some big sales to get us through the quiet period.
To get to that average.
Yeah, to get to that average.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. Well, we talked about price just a little bit, and I think you had a very narrow window in there in terms of where the support price is right now and where the resistance price is. And what is it, basically 6 to 7 cents at this point?
Yes. I think that, knock on wood here, Jim, I feel like 67 cents is going to hold the low end of this market. I really like the chart pattern that March is carving out. And it wouldn't take a lot, I don't think, but you still have to do it. It wouldn't take a lot to get us up to that 69.50 area.
Right.
And if we can get up there and break resistance on that trend line, I think we've got a shot at 72 to 73 cents. There's a lot of buying that's taken place here the last couple of days, a lot of selling too. Well, I think the selling's been coming from the speculators.
Right.
And I think the buying's been coming from the trade. And, one of these days, the speculator's going to wake up and say, geez, no matter how many contracts I sell, this market's just not going down. I'm going to get out and go play in another sandbox because I'm not getting
I'm not making anything.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything here. So, yeah, I think we could have a nice short covering rally. Now, there's a lot of growers selling above this market. They haven't had a chance to do it. A lot of on-call purchases out there. Purchases and sales. On-call purchases and on-call sales are and it's kind of counterintuitive. On-call sales are sales made to textile mills, and on-call purchases are purchases made from growers. Well, that on-call growers have to sell purchases, on-call sales, textile mills have to buy to fix their prices. Well, those are running pretty much in lockstep with each other right now. You go up a little bit, growers sell. You come down a little bit, mills buy. And so we're trapped kind of in a no man's land right now. It seems like between roughly 67 cents and 70 cents, although here lately it's been 67 to 69, and the last few days it's been 67, 68. But I do think that we're going to go up there. And a lot of times, this market will start rallying. You'll hit all the selling from growers. Well, you'll get close to where a grower might have had an order in. And he'll think, maybe I ought to cancel that sell order. It's called cancel and close, And I think, you get through maybe a cent or two of selling, and then I think there's going to be a vacuum of selling as growers say, wait a minute, I'm not going to sell. I think that I can get a little bit more out of this market. And I think that's what may help propel us up to that 72, 73 cent area.
Yeah, I think that's that I look at that scenario as you describe it, and the first thing that comes to mind, and I think it's something we've described as we go into this year, is there are two words, uncertainty and complicated.
Yeah.
And, uncertainty in terms of price, complicated in terms of acreage and things like that, because, at this point, who knows? Who knows? There's so many factors still out there that have to be determined, and growers are going to have to make their own decisions based on their geography and, their financial situation. And God knows that's, there's still some, a lot of questions about that as well.
And you toss in, and you hate to talk about this with your in-laws or anybody, but politics or religion, but, we just had election.
Right.
And everybody's worried about, if Trump throws out these tariffs, kind of willy-nilly across the board, what kind of an impact is that going to have on exports? Not just cotton exports, but exports of what's going to happen with
Sure.
trade, particularly with the United States. So that's an uncertainty. But and people really don't know how to react to that just yet. I think the president-elect, throws a lot of spaghetti against the wall and just, tries to figure out what's going to stick or not. And, whether he goes through with all of this tariff stuff, maybe it's just a negotiating ploy at this point in time, who knows? But that throws a little bit of a monkey into the wrench,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, Jarral, you're sitting out in California, which is a market that, we watch from afar, but we don't spend a whole lot of time in from our perspective, just because it's a unique beast unto itself. Where do you think California production is going to go this year with cotton?
I was watching this little video the other day about, it was an Archie Bunker video way back when. And he was upset because his daughter and Meathead,
Yeah.
they were going to move out to California. He says, you can't move out there. There's nothing but fruits and nuts out there, and the fruits and the nuts are pretty fruity and the fruits are getting nuttier.
Yeah.
And he goes, and you guys might be the last two that move out there before, God shoves it into the ocean. Well, I think we've had our share of interesting times out there. Not to mention this latest, disaster just unfolding before our very eyes. But from a water perspective, we dealt with water situations for many years, and it's been very difficult. That the president-elect talked about a smelt, protecting the smelt, and yes. The environmentalists have, I think, used this Delta smelt as a cudgel, to restrict water down into the Central Valley. The Delta smelt is a 3-inch bait fish that's got plenty of cousins out there, and but a lot of water gets shoved out and that's one thing that's very frustrating to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're agriculture or your industry or something. You're sitting there going, wait a minute, 80% of the water that comes,
Right.
snow melt, it's going out into the ocean instead of coming down south. At least, what we've got working for us this year are all of our reservoirs are pretty full, thank goodness, But these groundwater regulations that they call them Sigma, and I couldn't tell you what that stands for right at the moment. But anyway, the groundwater restrictions, and depending on where you are in the state, you've all got these little groundwater agencies.
Sure.
And all these agencies are trying to decide, they want to restrict pumping out of your own pump if you can, to try to build up these underground aquifers, if you will. But they're very expensive in some locations. Other locations haven't seemed to be too worried about it. But one location I'm fairly familiar with, the first 0.84 inches, not even 1 inch.
Right.
The first 0.84 inches of water that you pump out is free. Well, it's not free. You've got an investment in your pump and your
and the
equipment,
power,
right?
everything. Yeah.
Everything. The next inch and a half or something is like $150, and then then it goes up to $250, and anything over, Jim, I'm sorry, it's like the first 0.8 acre feet.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
had to be acre.
And I thought, wait a second, that hardly will fill a thimble. So, but basically, you can, for the first foot and a half, it's fairly reasonable, but you start getting over a certain amount, and it's $250 an acre foot, and then you exceed that level 3, it turns out to be like $500 an acre foot. So if you're using, I think I calculated, if you're using 3 acre feet of water, that's like $275 an acre just to plant your crop.
Right.
And or to grow your crop, and that's about what they'll use out there. Now the the drip guys could probably get away with less, maybe 2.5, but still. And that doesn't necessarily hit you if the state and the Fed allocations come down, enough. You may not need to use any of your own pumping water, but it does, it does present a problem.
It's
complicated.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? Alternative crops aren't great out there either. The nut crops almonds are finally starting to get a little bit of momentum on pricing. They've had some problems the last couple of years, particularly with insects. But the pistachios are doing okay. But okay, you're going to plant a tree crop and wait, 3 years for something. As far as row crops are concerned, okay, cotton is not great. The tomato contracts are far and few between right now. We got apparently enough tomato paste. Garlic contracts aren't good. Hay is not very good right now. Alfalfa is not very good right now. Corn silage is not good. So in terms of just row crop alternatives,
Right. There aren't any.
there aren't any.
Yeah.
And, I've had one grower say, hey, I'm not going to plant cotton on this ground for the first time since 1910. Well, he says that today.
Yeah.
That may be different, by the time it comes around to planting. But, they just, and then you've got other growers saying, okay, I hear that, so the Pima acres are going to be down. I'm just going to plant wall-to-wall Pima.
Yeah.
So, some people think that there's a diamond in the rough out there, if you will, and other people just see, if the glass is half empty, it's certainly not half full.
Yeah, definitely. Well, as always, it's going to be an interesting year. Yes. So that's always the one thing we can say. Let's, I certainly hope it goes well for California growers, and I certainly hope it goes well the same across the Cotton Belt, because, we've got, there are a lot of decisions still have to be made.
Definitely. And, this country is, it employs a lot of people in the cotton industry.
Yeah.
It supports a lot of small towns. You could just see that wherever, you drive through West Texas, when they have a good crop, there's a lot of nice new pickups driving down the road. Restaurants are full, it drives the economy.
Right.
In so many areas of our country.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that this turns out to be a better year than it is shaping up to be.
Right.
At this point.
And, so I hope I'm terribly wrong and we're up to 80 cents.
That's one thing I always say too. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I really hope I'm wrong on this. But anyway, Jarral, thanks. I appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jim.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. Thanks again to Jarral Neeper for visiting with me to share his insights and opinions regarding the cotton industry as we head toward planting. And thanks too to Vive Crop Protection for their continuing sponsorship of the podcast, and to Greg Esco for participating in this episode's special segment. And as always, thanks to you, dear listeners, for joining us and for your continuing support. As always, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you like what you heard, please be sure to spread the word and tell your friends about the Cotton Companion podcast. Here's where and how they can find us.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine.
Cotton Companion Podcast is produced twice monthly by Tyler Hatch and Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues at the world headquarters for Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Willoughby, Ohio. I'm Jim Stedman, and Beck Barnes and I will be back with you in a few weeks with the next episode of the Cotton Companion. Until then, stay safe, and above all, stay warm.
Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works all